Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an advertising and marketing guru with expertise in technology from Montreal, Canada, James Stephan-Usypchuk. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I get the heebie-jeebies when anybody calls me a guru, but I take the compliment. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. James is the Chief Marketing Officer of TriPhoenix Partners and the Njord Venture Group. He's a marketing strategist and an AI enthusiast who is deeply involved in leveraging artificial intelligence for business growth and lead generation. So, James, my first question to you is tell me a little bit about your own journey and what was the inspiration to get into marketing and technology?
So I've said this story a couple of times,
Mhm.
but I'm going to tell you that in the last 2 years, I've done a lot of soul searching to really get to the root.
Mhm.
So it starts back to when I was 2 years old. When I was 2 years old, I was diagnosed with a Wilms tumor. I was cancer on one of my
Wow.
kidneys,
Mhm.
and it put me in a very deep fight or flight survival mode for the beginning of my life. I obviously survived, conquered cancer, but I also, not without cost, it took 2 years, sacrificed a bunch of my childhood. And in order for me to feel like I was actually having agency and controlling my destiny, I jumped into fundraising at the age of 5.
Mhm.
Fundraising, I'm talking about raising money for research into children's diseases.
Mhm.
I did that for 15 years, and I still occasionally contribute as much as I have time and obviously donate. But I did that going in between lunch hours and breaks, and every gap of time I had, I threw myself into this project because I wanted to give back. I wanted to try and help people that were less fortunate than myself. I had lost the only friends I had to cancer. They
Mm,
were passing away, and I was kind of living with a bit of survivor's guilt. Um,
mm,
Doing that at such a young age, I developed a very keen sense for sales,
mhm,
ironically, because you kind of have to have good sales if you're a 5-year-old trying to sell tutus and mints to a 50-year-old professor or something,
mm,
right? So I did that, and it kind of developed my work ethic and my drive. And obviously, my family, my mom was always into catering or kind of company projects of her own, and so I gained a lot of that entrepreneurial drive from my family.
mhm,
Uh, but fast forwarding into my career, that work ethic carried over into my studies. I was an A student, etc. But I wanted more. And so I took an interest in psychology. And I was always good on the computer. And so graphic design was my thing. And I started a marketing agency at the age of 16.
amazing.
Um, and I can tell you one thing, I tried to grow a beard as fast as I could because who the hell is going to give a 16-year-old $20,000 to do a website?
Yeah.
Like that was the world I was living in. And in 2008, my agency really took off when Facebook basically made itself known. This was back when you needed an advertiser's license. You had to sign up for one. My advertiser's license, it was 3 digits to give you an idea of how old I am
Mm,
in terms of space. And I was always obsessed with the customer journey psychology, and I got into touch point theory. Touch point theory being that how many impressions or touches does the average person need to see
mhm,
to buy or convert or do an action. And so I started modeling what I was seeing based off of anecdotal data, but also theory, like
mhm,
academic papers. And I quickly created blueprints that I was using in my own advertising campaigns that were doing quite well.
mm,
Uh, Fast forward 2, 3 years, and I hired my CTO, chief strategist, and one of my best friends, Sheldon Poon,
mm.
whom I just want to say congratulations to Sheldon and Cassandra. They just had a beautiful baby boy, and I'm super thrilled for them. But in bringing in Sheldon, we started talking about what it is that I created in terms of blueprint, and he was like, this is actually like a framework for like a machine learning
Hmm.
element where you like the neural net, we just need to code it. And I was like, okay, so let's do that. My agency, which was already quite successful, pivoted into an AI development company. So we wanted to distinguish ourselves from just every other agency because it was quite a saturated market. But we also had a very clear cutting edge solution in that we were always able to generate high returns on whatever campaign we were doing, whether it was recruiting for HR, whether it was and whether it was heck, we've even had political parties reach out and say, "Can we use this for voting?"
Mm,
Which we have not done. But being said, we've been agnostic in use and application,
mm,
and so we kept doing this, and we quickly dovetailed into, well, now we have a company that is a tech company instead of a marketing company, but we're going to do it as a service, just because we wanted to
fantastic.
make sure
Yeah,
that the ethics were observed. Like
absolutely.
obviously, you can have a lot of bad actors that come in and want to use
Correct.
your tech for evil. I had one group that approached us and wanted to use it for a pump and dump strategy on the stock market. I was like,
Mm,
no, we're not doing that. I like
mm.
my life. Thank you very much. So I've seen all kinds of characters.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great response. Great response. Thank you. And since you have founded your agency, and as you mentioned, Facebook came in later, you understand Facebook marketing or advertising well. My question is, what are some of the common mistakes you have seen businesses make when it comes to Facebook advertising?
Oh boy. Where do I start? The first thing I would say, because I come from the data world, right? I
Mm,
care about good quality data. I
mm,
care about good quality um, funnel structure. A lot of businesses don't invest enough in marketing. And I know it sounds controversial. James, we're in an economic downturn. Like, what are you talking about? But the reality is, if you go cheap, and I've seen this before, a lot of times the funnel or the built-in like solutions that they're trying to drive traffic to are very poorly constructed. So I would say 60% of the time my team spends when we're going into a new client is fixing what was put in place. So that for me is a huge red flag of, hey, you didn't know what you're doing, fine, but neither did the group that you hired. And so there's this whole concept of making sure that you give a proper customer journey, know your USP, your unique selling proposition, because if you don't, how can you expect the customer to know what's so special
mm,
about it? And then from there, meeting them on the foundational like level of where you are, whether it's Facebook, email, LinkedIn. We're really good at Facebook. Obviously, that's our bread and butter and our claim to fame. But we have expanded into B2B lead generation. That
mhm,
is one of our strengths as well. And it comes down to the same formula. How many times does a user need to see a certain sequence of ads or events or whatnot to convert? And what are they perceiving when they come through our funnel? And so for us, in a distilled answer, it's having your foundation done well.
mm. Well said. Well said. And let's talk a little bit now about artificial intelligence. That's another area of interest for you. How can small and medium businesses leverage AI-driven solutions for lead generation? And could these be very expensive?
So this is kind of a loaded question because there's many answers to this. Short answer is no.
Mm,
Back when I started in my career and pivoted to an agency, we were charging $250,000 to use our system.
mhm,
AI at the time was way before OpenAI even was a blip on the radar. We were looking at generating really high volume of data points and reverse engineering those data points. There was a lot of calculations and a lot of data that we were purchasing.
mm,
But now we're in an age of AI where it's become accessible. So I would say, no, it's not expensive. I mean, I think for us and our firm, we charge anywhere from 3,000 to 15,000 a month. We usually work with B2B groups or consumer packaged goods or B2C specifically for their lead generation needs.
mm,
But even removing all of that, you have tools like Monica, you have tools like Perplexity, ChatGPT, Claude. All of these are tools that are fairly inexpensive that you can quite literally create a mini CMO in your pocket and go in and ask it very specific questions, and
Mm,
it will help develop the framework. And then you can always go to a professional to validate it. But I
mm,
mean, these are tools that are quite easily used and even accepted in the market. The content it pushes out is quite good. I write quite a bit about it on LinkedIn, talking about the application of AI and how it's changing the M&A, family office, private equity space. But it applies to every company, whether it's B2B or B2C. If they're not using AI of some shape or form, whether it's a live chatbot that will have conversational AI with prospects that are visiting your website, to an automated AI SDR that will prospect constantly and reach out and speak to leads.
mm,
I think it's an opportunity missed. It's kind of like the saying of you're hungry, you've been, searching in the desert for food, and circa 2 years ago, you've been presented with a buffet. Now all you have to do is eat.
mm.
I think that's kind of where we are right
Very
now.
well said. Very well said. But the other question, James, that is often asked when it comes to AI is how do you ensure the ethical aspect of AI? And now you're talking marketing and you're talking of, taking uh, your brand's features to the outside world. How do you ensure ethical considerations when it comes to AI-driven marketing initiatives?
So I think this is a very important question, and it's something that's quite dear to me. I've spoken, guest lectured at Concordia University and JMSB, going through
Mm,
the ethics of AI and data management.
mm,
It really comes down to, from my experience, education. And kind of like digital literacy, there's
mhm,
also a layer of education and morality that needs to, or I should say, ethics that comes into and needs to be put in place. And so creating a series of content, creating, I would say, almost like a database of what the do's and don'ts are and the potential negative impacts that there are. It's not just a business that's going to get negatively impacted off of
mm,
poor ethics. It comes down to families. So one of the things that I learned in psychology that always stuck with me, it's there are producers and consumers in the world. And if you're not a consumer, which everybody is, you're a producer. Producer in the traditional sense, everybody thinks, oh, a big company, this, that, and the other. But it could be also a small business that's running ads on Facebook because it's so accessible and the algorithms are, quite fast and loose. You'll get your messages out well before they flag you. But imagine for a second, I'm a pharmaceutical company. I just created an ad campaign targeting I don't know, young parents, and I say something to the effect of, if you do X, Y, and Z, then you'll be happier, etc. Just by that narrative, it is trying to target people that are unhappy, yes, but it can also cause a net negative sentiment to the person seeing it, saying, "Oh, I'm not happy." A lot of these things are subjective, like subliminal messaging, and so that's a very small microcosm example, but it has such a massive ripple effect going
yeah.
down from the family to the kids.
Mm,
So it really has to come down to education. People need to be properly informed, not just the producers, but the consumers as well,
mm,
to be aware of bad practices and also what could be potentially harmful to them.
right.
But to create a bit of a board of ethics for any person that advertises, I always wanted to
Mm,
do a kind of like like I always when I started my agency, I told my team we're going to be like a doctor, right? We're going to take an oath to do no harm no matter what we do, and I think it's something that most groups should observe, and I think it's
mm.
an agent's responsibility to go in and practice and teach ethics as well.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Thank you. Um, my next question relates to something that has been happening in marketing for forever. I mean, I know I used to look at it for 4 decades ago when I was a 22-year-old, and that's psychometric profiling of your customers. But
Yes.
I understand this has changed completely with technology and artificial intelligence. So, can you talk a little bit about how important is psychometric profiling in digital marketing campaigns?
Well, of course. So psychometric profiling is at the heart of technology that we've built.
Yeah.
One is called IDA 2.0. Um, why it's important, first we'll talk about the why and then the how. So it's
Hmm.
important because in the age-old adage of marketing and knowing your customer, you
Hmm.
really need to understand who you're going after. Gone are the days of stick it in a magazine, get a million impressions, and then we sell product, right? This is not Tide circa 1970 or 1980. So imagine I'm advertising to these people, and I want to know everything about them. Why do I want to know everything about them? Is because they are currently exposed to a minimum of 15,000 ad impressions per day.
Hmm.
So if you think for a second, 15,000 ad impressions per day, I'll be lucky if I get three or four of those and stitch them together to get them to remember a quarter of a second of me
Yeah.
to get them and follow through. The way you're able to stitch that together so that there is a layer of a recall for them
Hmm.
is if you know who you're talking to and as if you know what you're saying and know how to resonate with them. And that's where psychometric profiling comes in. Right now, we have over 24 different algorithms that we've written that come out and create our own profiling. We've been pretty consistent with it. It's been around in our team for over 15 years,
Hmm.
but we're able to go in and reverse engineer more or less what a customer or a prospect is looking for, why they're looking for it, and then use that data to be predictive. When
Hmm.
you get into predictive, that's where the AI comes in. It's able to predict groups that maybe are looking to sell their company that haven't
Hmm.
disclosed that yet. Maybe that they're looking to buy a car, but they haven't disclosed that they just got promoted or a
Hmm.
raise, or whatever. All of these things are important because you need to be able to think a bit like in chess. Where are they going? Not where have they been and where are they? And
Hmm.
that where are they going is the secret sauce. So if I'm a potential business owner, how do I profile? The old strategy is still somewhat relevant, right? If you were to say, let's just do a customer map and let's be objective, not who do I think based off of who answers my phone and who I like the most. No, let's be objective in what is our type A, type B, type C customer.
Hmm.
I always like to say, who is the whale? The whale is the ideal number one customer that comes in.
Hmm.
Look from previous sales, look at the person that was the question before, use AI to help build this for you. If we can do that, start asking Claude or ChatGPT, I've built a customer persona, act as a psychometric profiler marketing with a psychology degree, hint, hint, and then give it all this context and tell it to create a comprehensive list of targets or factors that make these people targetable, and then follow up with, and now create me a profile of this person that I can plug into Facebook. It will do it for you. And I think that's where a lot of people need to start
That's so
thinking.
true. That is so true. I've time for two more questions for you. When I was reading about you to prepare for this conversation, I was fascinated that you work with Fortune 500 companies and you work with startups. How do you shift gears when you're developing a marketing strategy for a Fortune 500 company versus a startup?
It's a good question. So with Fortune 500 companies, there's a lot more infrastructure in place. So oftentimes the role that I'm taking, whether it's a fractal CMO or
Mm.
it's a pure service provider or an acquirer, we look at where's the value add that we can bring, right? We're not trying to change everything. We're
Yeah.
trying to enhance what's there. The nature of AI is to enhance what already exists.
Mm.
If you're looking at a Fortune 500 and you're starting to say, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, the likelihood you're going to implement any of it is next to nil.
Mm.
You don't have a lot of flexibility in terms of how agile and maneuverable you can be. So we try to, when we come in with those deals, we try to find what is the sweet spot of areas of optimization, where does our AI fit, and how can we enhance the strategy so it's the output is a higher quality of leads and a better closing rate. That's ultimately what most of them are looking for. With startups, it's sort of a bit of a blank canvas, depending on where they are in their journey. Obviously, with Njord, we're a VC, so we do micro investments in specifically companies in AI MarTech, but we look at companies that are of a bit of a level of maturity and where they would be ready for some kind of full scale marketing campaign. Typically, we like to see companies that have a bit of an MVP, so way past an idea and a thought, and have already generated a product and have some kind of proof of market fit. If we have those, then it just comes down to a structure of, okay, where do we go for the lowest hanging fruit to close the most in the shortest amount of time? Because cash is king, and as we want to generate as much cash flow as possible. From there, we then reverse engineer the small, medium, and large scale targets, and then associate the closing cycles with each of them. And then we go out and build a strategy, and where our AI is the chief, leading element in everything we do. So with startup, it's more of a blank canvas on how to generate as much cash as possible. With Fortune 500s, it's all about efficiency.
Great response. And my last question for you, James, and this is for you personally. You started life when you're 2 years old, and you've been doing all kinds of entrepreneurial ventures and doing all kinds of things. My question is, what leadership principles have been critical to your success in your own life and in managing AI-driven ventures?
So it's a good question. I would say, going back to the do no harm thing, I've always tried to live my life under this, Hippocratic oath that we did or didn't take, right? But I also believe that I want to leave the world in a better place for my kids than what it was when I came in.
Yeah.
And I also, I'm a person who loves talking. I love meeting people. I love chatting. I have to have an element of love in my work, or else it becomes work. And I think that's something that I've carried throughout my journey. I've tried all these different, bailiwicks of businesses and ideas and ventures, but it's always come with a stitch of love. And I think if I can say one thing, it's make sure that you love what you're doing, but also that you're doing what you love with the right intentions. And I mean, we make mistakes all the time. And, just like some people say, oh, I'm afraid to screw up my kids. You will screw up. You're going to make mistakes, but make sure that the good intentions are there. And then if you can carry that and translate that to people, when you have employees, make sure that your intentions are not just good for your business and the business itself, but for them as well. And if you do that, then you'll have a very good support base to be able to grow and get people to buy into what you have.
Well said. And on that note, James, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me. This has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you for talking to me about your journey. It's incredible how early you started and how many different ventures you've been involved in. I think I learned some new things from you about Facebook marketing and advertising. Thank you for talking to me about artificial intelligence, how small businesses can effectively leverage AI. Thank you also for talking to me about ethical considerations for psychometric profiling, and finally also for the differences in campaigns between startups and Fortune 500 companies. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.